Well, thanks for joining me for another episode of the Friday Reporter podcast. I've got Josh Siegel today with me, who is an energy and environment reporter for Politico, who is also just coming off of Clean Energy Week, and he's moving into another big energy month with the White House making an announcement about focus on that issue. So, Josh, thanks so much for letting me grab you for a few minutes this morning.
Yeah,
How are you?
absolutely. Thanks for having me. I'm doing
You bet.
great, doing great. Yeah.
So Josh, so you yourself also are a podcaster. So I'm grateful to chat with another fellow person who's spending a little time doing some writing and doing some broadcasting and some other things. Talk to me a little bit about how you got started in journalism.
Yeah, so I originally wanted to be a sports writer, sports reporter. That was my dream as far back as I can remember. Grew up in Chicago, huge Chicago
Big state
sports
for
fan.
yeah, big
Yeah.
city for
And
sports. Yeah.
did the high school newspaper. I remember I did some even like hip hop album reviews. It was kind of all over, not
Awesome.
politics yet. Didn't catch the political bug until later. And then in college, I went to Florida Gulf Coast University, which is a small school kind of in Naples, Fort Myers, Florida, actually the area that was just hit by
Yeah, I was
Hurricane
going to ask
Ian.
you about that.
Yeah, and yeah, like kind of late in my maybe senior year, I just decided like sports, I don't know, it's great to have as a hobby, but do I want to do that day in, day out and like
Mhm.
follow a team? I don't know if that's really piquing my curiosity, and I kind of want to, keep learning and things like that, and challenge myself. So I kind of decided late in college, I'm gonna get on the traditional news side and do some reporting, and from there did some kind of freelance and Naples Daily News, their daily newspaper. Worked
Mhm.
for a local television station out of college and also in the area in Fort Myers, kind of sitting at the newsroom desk listening to the police scanner, and that was a
Nice.
lot of fun, making calls
I
whenever
bet.
something happened out in the streets of Fort Myers. And then did some local news reporting in Southwest Florida, just kind of covering a bunch of different beats, school
Right.
board, county commission, all sorts of things.
Cutting
And
your teeth there.
yeah,
Yeah.
and then decided to come to DC in like, what was it, 2014. I
Okay.
just picked up and moved from Florida. Figured you could kind of jump markets in journalism, I think, in a way that maybe you couldn't before, because you can kind of establish a brand kind of separate from where you work based on social media and things like
Absolutely.
that. And yeah, found my way eventually into, into politics and policy, and then even more recently into energy and climate. So it's been a little bit, I think, of an unusual arc compared to a lot of journalists,
You know,
but yeah, it's been a lot of fun.
you're episode 87 of the show. And so I've found that everybody has a little bit of a different path,
Yeah.
how they get into it, but it is always, you sort of come to it honestly, right? I mean, you come to it in a way where you're just curious about the issues, curious about the industry, and then sort of find yourself in this place. The first, you had a couple of different spots before you arrived at Politico. You're new-ish to Politico. Has it always been energy and the environment, or how did that happen for you?
No, yeah, not at all. Yeah. So my first gig in DC, I worked for the Daily Signal, which was the Heritage Foundation, the conservative think tank. They started a news site. And I
Yeah.
honestly went into that like not really knowing much about heritage, but they're like, hey, we want to, have a traditional news site and
Right.
have traditional journalists like with, you know, nonpartisan backgrounds. And yeah, it was kind of my way into DC. And when I was there for about 3 years. I covered like everything. I covered immigration, criminal justice, foreign policy, actually
Oh,
almost
wow.
everything but energy.
Is that right?
um, yeah, kind of funny. Covered Congress, really obviously focusing a lot on the Republicans and the conservatives. And yeah, eventually, it was back in 2017. I transitioned over to the Washington Examiner.
Mhm.
Thought, more traditional news outlet, obviously still kind of in the right of center.
Yeah.
So it was a natural transition. But there, I was really hired to cover like breaking news and just everything under the sun again, and and
Wow.
and, and not really having a beat. But I'd say it was maybe a year or two into that, they had an opening on the energy and environment beat. We have a newsletter, or they had a newsletter daily on energy,
Mhm.
and there was one author. They wanted a second one because this beat was so intense. There was so much going on. This was
So much going
during the
on.
Trump administration. There was a lot happening, and I thought, hey, if I have a beat, like maybe I could really own that and really get to know, that it was great kind of getting my hands on everything. But I thought if I focus on one area, I could really maybe differentiate myself and really get, better sourcing. And
Right.
And yeah, it just kind of fell into energy environment and haven't stopped since. And have just kind of like come to love the area. I just feel like there's so much going on. It's a
There
very
is so
important beat.
much to
Yeah.
cover. So as much as it's sort of a considered, if you think about sort of the energy beat, there are so many avenues you can take, right? There's so many different directions you can go with what you're covering. And now you're at Politico, and Politico is amongst many of the publications in town have so many different tracks and so many different things that they're producing on a daily basis. Talk to me a little bit about your role there. I know you have the podcast. You're producing regular news articles. Are you also on a newsletter? Tell me a little bit about sort of your
Mhm.
position there and how that looks.
Yeah, so I'm, technically on the Politico Pro, like energy and environment reporting team. So,
Right.
Politico Pro is our subscriber
Mhm.
based, site. And there's about eight, seven or eight of us on the energy environment team. And, uh, yeah, I mean, my role specifically is I'm the person on the energy environment team who's really focused on Congress. So
Okay.
I'm in the Capitol, 3 4 days a week when they're in session. I'm tracking votes, chasing stories. I mean,
Yep.
I came in right when the Democrats reconciliation bill was hot, front and center. So that was a big focus of mine. Permitting more recently with
Yeah.
Senator Manchin,
Hmm.
priority that suffered a setback, but we'll see if that comes back. So yeah, and then I have this podcast, Political Energies podcast, that I do every weekday. So that's kind of interviewing fellow journalists on my team mostly. Sometimes we'll get a politician on there, a policymaker. So that's a part of my daily routine. And then yeah, I mean, because our issues are so front and center, like with OPEC's recent decision to cut oil production. I mean, I've had opportunity to report. I mean, our stories go on the main Politico site. We're interacting. Sometimes I'm collaborating with our normal like Senate reporters. Burgess
Sure.
Everett's our big time Congress reporter, our bureau chief. We collaborated on a permitting story because I mean, it just feels like our issues are like front and center. So yeah, there's I'm a policy reporter, but it's Politico, so there's always a politics element. There's always opportunity to interact with others who aren't on the energy team, who I see in the Capitol, defense
Sure.
reporters. So yeah, I mean, it's
Well, they need your
a lot of fun.
expertise on those
Yeah,
specific issues too, because they're covering sort of the machinations of how
yeah,
the Senate and House are moving, and then they need to sort of better understand that deeper dive. That's the thing, the point, something that really that struck me earlier when you talked about sort of moving around and learning so much about all these different issues. That's one of the tricks of journalism and really on the PR side too, is that like we have to be quick studies and we have to get really smart.
yeah,
But when you get yourself into a space where you can really start to get deeper into the policy and better understand the issues, it gets to be a lot more fun because you can be a resource and you can be a real big asset to the folks on your team.
definitely.
When you're doing your interviewing every day with your podcast, you're talking to journalists about the news of the day and what sort of I see that it's very short, which seems to be sort
Yeah.
of the model. So it's quick and it's a quick conversation, just a few minutes, so people can get their news, get in and get out.
Yeah, I mean, generally, I'm talking to a fellow journalist on the team about kind of the story of the day from our team that we feel like presses forward. It's not necessarily like a recap of something that happened, unless it's something major. Like I was the guest yesterday. My producer, or sorry, this morning's podcast on
Oh,
a Friday morning that just came out, where my producer interviewed me about OPEC and some of
okay.
the options
Yeah.
that Democrats are talking about to respond to what they did. But yeah, generally, it's kind of a push it forward story, or maybe a bigger picture, deeper dive. And yeah, we're just it's 3 4 questions. We the format, they do feel like it under 10 minutes. I mean, while you're making your breakfast or walking your dog in the
Perfect.
morning, it's just
Perfect.
I appreciate a longer deep dive conversation as well. I mean, I know there's different audiences or different podcasts cater to different audiences. And
Yeah.
but yeah, this
I'm
one
a
is
drive time
good
audience.
catering. Okay.
My friends tell me that they listen to the
Yeah,
show on their way from Alexandria to Virginia, or from,
yeah,
Maryland to DC, wherever they have to go. So their short 30-minute commute, they'll listen to the Friday Reporter.
nice, nice.
Um, Talk to me a little bit about, because you've covered so many different things. Is there a particular story? Is there a particular project? Is there something that that sticks out in your mind as one that you're especially proud of?
Yeah, I mean, I think my coverage, because of where I've worked, I mean, I feel like I've really covered the Republicans closely, especially on kind of their evolution on climate change, and just coming to recognize and the issue as a problem that they need to come up with a policy response to. So I think I've been very much on top of their machinations and what they're doing, and I've broken all sorts of stories on that. I think most recently at Politico, I had a story earlier this year just about how Republicans are actually kind of taking from the Trump trade playbook, are starting to look at like ways to incorporate climate in trade and to potentially come up with a policy to impose some sort of tariff, or technically it's called a carbon border adjustment, but something on high carbon intensive imports coming in. And I was really on top of some of the policymakers who are really leading on that, like Senator Kevin Cramer, Senator Bill Cassidy. These are Republicans from North Dakota
Big
and
energy states.
energy state in Louisiana, and they're not people you would naturally like think would be wanting to come up with a solution here, but they're actually having conversations with Trump world, like former Trump trade advisor Robert Lighthizer, to kind of bring credibility with conservatives to this issue. It's still early days and there's no like legislation yet, but I think that's like an area that I'm really on top of, where if Republicans take the House or even the Senate, you would see that as kind of front in their agenda. And Democrats are very interested. Chris Coons of Delaware is really on top of that. A Sheldon Whitehouse, Rhode Island. So it's one of these areas that's there's bipartisan interest. So yeah, I think I've added a lot of color to that conversation, and just generally, I think my reporting on the Republican side has broken some ground.
Well, the evolution has been dramatic from the time that I worked in the energy space myself, having been sort of, it's just changed so much, and it's a good change, right? It's a change that is, I mean, if we're smart about it, R's and D's, and really just the country in general, this is an opportunity for us, right? This is if we can figure this out, well, then we're going to set the tone for the rest of the globe, right? And that's the kind of thing that we always talked about when we were, when I was in the industry, even just that this is an opportunity that really could be seized on. So it'd be fun to see. Well, agreement on just about anything would be fun to see at this point, but
Yeah.
but so much of energy too now, not only in the Congress and not only on the Republican side, but also in the ballot, right? I mean, it's really, energy is like on the ballot this year with the discussion about the cost of the cost of gas and the cost of goods and services, and the holdup that has caused in terms of supply chain. Like, it's really prevalent. People are talking about it across the dinner table, right? And that's got to
Yeah.
be interesting too for you.
Yeah, no, I mean, I just had a midterm story that, I mean, we ended up gearing towards the OPEC decision on how, I have had conversations up to that, like for months, with Republican operatives, Democrats, campaign staff for certain candidates. And I mean, Republicans were really counting on high energy prices as being, the most, especially gasoline prices, this most visible form of the high inflation that we're experiencing. And that was the issue they were really pressing in the midterms. But then we had the summer where prices, came down for 99 straight days at the pump. And, there was in talking with some staffs, it was on the Republican side, hey, we need to broaden the message. We know abortion came up, immigration, and former President Trump's presence, and some of the, Senate candidates that he's, influenced there. So, but then this, I think this OPEC decision does kind of bring it right back. I mean, we'll see about the real market impacts of gasoline prices. I mean, I think some of it might be overstated. We're already seeing some increases in certain markets like California, where there were some refinery outages. So I mean, some of that's baked in. So we'll see how that plays out. But yes, I mean, clearly this is still the Republicans would tell you it's just this is a kitchen table election. They're really talking about prices. They're talking about crime. I mean, these are issues they're focused on. Democrats want to broaden that conversation and say, look, I mean, Biden has been very aggressive in trying to address high energy prices. He's released historic amounts of crude oil from the Strategic Petroleum Reserve, right? I mean, they have the Inflation Reduction Act, which they say will reduce dependence on fossil fuels over time. So it'll be interesting to see how it plays out, but it's definitely a front and center issue, I think, more than we've seen.
Yeah, and I think that probably makes the beat a little bit more fun, a little more exciting. I mean, not that it's not already so many opportunities and so many things to talk about. All right, so when you're not talking about energy and you're not writing about it and you're not podcasting about it, what kinds of things are keeping you busy?
Yeah, so I'm very into sports. I've kept that as my hobby. So as far as recreational,
Are
I
you a
play.
White Sox? Or you? I mean,
I'm a White Sox
White Sox
fan on baseball. Yeah,
Uh-huh.
I have South Side in my family, so
Yeah.
Yeah, Chicago Bulls, Bears. It's a suffering sports city. Not a lot of success since the Jordan years, and I was pretty much too young to enjoy that.
That's all right.
But yeah, I play tennis. Like to I'm a foodie, eat different kinds of foods, travel, into music, hip hop music.
Got
Yeah,
it.
but no, I'm mostly
Hip
just,
hop, going back to that
yeah,
original review that you did way
yeah,
back when,
exactly.
right? I love it.
But yeah, no, I'm mostly, I mean, I'm a news junkie, so I'm just,
I wrote a
I'm
term
always,
paper in college about the Black Sox, about the Chicago Black Sox, and got an A on it. It was a dynamite
wow.
paper. My father to this day still teases me that maybe I bought it, which I did not. I wrote it legitimately, but he was like, I'm not sure. Why are you so interested in this? But what a fascinating story about
Wait,
that.
where did you go to school?
I went to Trent State College. I grew up in
Okay,
New Jersey. Yeah,
interesting.
but I'm a
Yeah,
baseball kid. Like I grew up a
gotcha.
Yankees fan. So, but I love
Nice.
baseball. I love sports, and that's a big thing. Have you watched The Bear? Have you watched the show about
Oh yeah,
Chicago?
yeah.
Yeah,
No, I
what a great show.
love that show. Just great, yeah, representation of Chicago, and just like, yeah, they're just even like the imagery and the setting of it is really cool, and like all the shots of the train and the metro and
Yeah,
just
it makes you feel
yeah,
like you're getting a little flavor of the city, right? I love it.
yeah. No, it's a really cool show. I'm
It's great.
definitely into that.
So, have you been back? Do you get back at all?
Yeah, yeah. My mom's still there,
Huh.
family. So yeah, I go a couple times a year, and summertime Chicago's got that great reputation. So great, yeah, great music festivals, and there's always
Yeah.
things going on. But yeah, I mean, it's a good time of year to be not there though. I mean, it starts to get cold, and
It's
then
here it comes,
I
right?
mean,
It's on the
yeah,
way.
yeah, you don't see the sun for weeks and months, and
No.
so I don't miss that aspect of it. Definitely not.
Yeah. Awesome. All right. So, last question of the show is always I'm looking for a recommendation for the next episode for the podcast. Is there somebody on your team, somebody you've worked with? Could be a DC
Ooh,
person, could be anywhere. Is there someone that you think would be a good guest for a future episode?
wow. Let me think about that. So you're thinking in the energy space or
Could be
outside?
anywhere. Could be anybody. Could be anybody on your team. Could be somebody you've worked with in Florida. But I, more than anything, the podcast started as sort of an inside the Beltway conversation, and has really started to expand out from there. I've talked to some folks from Arkansas. I've talked to some folks from
Mhm.
really all over, and I'm just trying to expand my network. So if you've got a buddy or a friend, and you can reserve the right to let me know after the fact too.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't just want to put someone on the spot and then like miss out on someone. But I mean, for my team, I mean, I think like Zach Coleman is interesting, right? He reports a lot on the international climate space, and someone who's been with us a long time and was kind of influential in helping me get a opportunity here at Politico. So yeah, he's great on energy, and yeah, I mean, Burgess,
I was going to
again,
say
more
Burgess.
broadly
This would
is
be
really
Burgess's second
interesting.
nomination. I'm
Yeah,
pretty
he's
sure that he was also nominated by John
was he?
Bresnahan. So
Yeah,
let's put him on the hot seat too.
he's super. I mean, he's kind of his. I'd be curious what you can get out of him as far as describing his process. He's always like lurking in some hallway that I'm like, what?
That is the creature of
Yeah,
the Senate, though. I mean, that
yeah,
is, those guys have a special kind of sauce that they do. All right, cool. Well, I'll put both those guys on your list for recommendations. And Josh, I'm really grateful for your time today. Thanks so much for joining me.
yeah. Thanks, Lisa. It was fun. Appreciate it.